Okay, freshmen, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to simplify radicals. In other words, how to simplify square roots. So before we get started, let's go through some vocabulary words. So in this example, square root of 64, first thing you have to know is that the square root is also known as the radical. So the radical is the symbol for square root. Now the radicand. The radicand is the number inside the square root. So the radicand here is 64. Now, obviously, if you simplify square root of 64, you get 8 because 8 times 8 equals 64. So the square root of 64 is 8. And remember, if you remember from our last lesson in Algebra 1, negative 8 times negative 8 is also 64. So technically, our answer here should be plus or minus 8. But for today's lesson, we're only going to be using the positive numbers. So the square root of 64 is 8. Now, just some other perfect squares. So square root of 4, because 2 times 2 equals 4. Square root of 9. Square root of 16. Square root of 25. Square root of 36. And so on. So there's a lot of perfect squares. Now, for example 1, let's simplify the square root of 27. So to simplify, well, notice first that the square root of 27 is not a perfect square. So that's why you have to simplify it. So here's how you do it. You're looking for two multiples. In other words, two numbers that multiply to give you 27, but one of them has to be a perfect square. So let's go down the list to see which number divides into 27 evenly. So 27 divided by 4 is a decimal. That's not it. 27 divided by 9 is 3. So yes. 27 divided by 16. Nope. 27 divided by 25. No. So none of these work. These are too big. So the only one that works is 9. So square root of 9 times square root of 3. All we have to do now is simplify and we will be done. So simplify the perfect square. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 3 is not a perfect square, so just bring it down. And you are done. And you are done once you know this can no longer be simplified. So to check your work, we're going to use the calculator. Square root of 27 and 3 root 3 should be the exact same decimal. So let me check. Square root of 27 is 5.19. And 3 root 3 is also 5.19. Therefore, our simplification is correct. These two are equivalent. For example 2, we are simplifying square root of 72. And of course, it's not a perfect square. So we have to simplify. So here's our list of perfect squares. So let's find the multiples of 72, but one of them has to be a perfect square. So again, two numbers that multiply to give you 72, but one of them has to be a perfect square. So let's go down the list. 72 divided by 4. That works. Let me double check. 72 divided by 4 is 18, so yes, it does work. 72 divided by 9 is 8, so that works. 72 divided by 16, I don't think so. .5, so no. 72 divided by 25, no. 72 divided by 36 is a yes. Let me double check. 72 divided by 36 is a yes. 72 divided by 49, I don't think so. No. So I feel like that is it right there. None of these other perfect squares divide into 72. The rest are too big. Now, so we have three options, but you always choose the biggest one, and I'll show you why in a minute. So we're going to go with square root of 36. So that was what? 2. So 36 times 2. Well, square root of 36 times 2 will give us a square root of 72. All you have to do now is simplify and you will be done. So square root of 36 is 6. Bring down the square root of 2 and you are done. And of course, you can always check it. Square root of 72 is 8.48. And then we're checking to see if it's equivalent to 6 square root of 2. And of course, they give you the same decimal, so you are correct. Now, let me go back and tell you why I told you to pick the biggest square root. So let me do the work right here really small. So the square root of 72. Let's say you chose 9. So the square root of 72 can be simplified as square root of 9 times square root of 8. And of course, we can do that because 9 times 8 is 72. So let's simplify. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 8 is not a perfect square, but bring it down. Now, notice that the square root of 8 can still be simplified because the perfect square of 4 goes into 8. So if you break down square root of 8 as square root of 4 times square root of 2, and then you bring down this 3, so we're one step closer to being done. So simplify. 3 times square root of 4, you know it's 2. Bring down the square root of 2. Now the last step you have to do is multiply these two. 3 times 2 is 6. Bring down the square root of 2. You get the exact same answer, but more steps. So remember, to avoid all this work, choose the biggest square root, the biggest perfect square that divides evenly into your number. Now, for example 3, let's simplify the square root of 288. So again, it's not a perfect square, so you have to simplify. So here's our list of perfect squares. Now, I'm sure that, let's go down the list. I'm sure 4 goes into it. Let me double check real quick. 288 divided by 4. Yes, it does. 72. Square root of 9. I don't think so. 16 might. 288 divided by 16. Yes, it does. 16 is good. Square root of 25. No. 36 might. Let me see. 288 divided by 36 is 8. So it's a yes. Square root of 45. No. Square root of 64. Maybe. 288 divided by 64 is a no. Square root of 88. I don't think so. 288 divided by 81 is a no. 100, no. 121, no. I think 144 does, so let's check. So 288 divided by 144. Yes, and it's 2. Now, there's more, but I'm sure this right here is the biggest one. So again, to avoid all that work, we're going to choose the biggest perfect square. So square root of 44. So square root of 44 times square root of 2 equals 288. So let's do it this way. Square root of 144 is a perfect square. You get 12. Bring down the square root of 2, and you are done. Okay, now let's just do this extra step. Let's say you said it was 36. Let's say you didn't check any of these and you didn't even see 144. So let's work it out with 36. Now, square root of 288, we're going to break it down with 36 times square root of, what was 288 divided by 36? 288 divided by 36 was 8. Now, so 36 times 8 gives you 288. So this is still right. So if you simplify, you get 6 root 8. And again, square root of 8 can still be simplified. You can break that down with square root of 4 times square root of 2. Bring this down. And if you keep simplifying, bring down the 6. Square root of 4 is 2. Bring down the square root of 2. Multiply these two numbers and you get 12 root 2. Same answer, but make sure you choose the biggest perfect square at the beginning. You'll do less work. So go ahead and pause the video and try this problem out. So here's the list of our perfect squares. So let's go ahead and simplify. Two numbers that multiply to give us 150, but one of them has to be a perfect square. So I already did the math ahead of time, and I know that's the square root of 25. So 150 divided by 25 is 6. So square root of 25 times 6 will give you 150. Your last step is to simplify. Square root of 25 is 5. Bring down the square root of 6. And again, I know I am done simplifying because the square root of 6 cannot be divided into any of these perfect squares. So this right here is your final answer. Now, the very last step to your lesson is to rationalize. So you rationalize whenever you have a square root in the denominator. So that's one of the rules in math. You cannot have a square root in the denominator. So to get rid of it, you have to rationalize. So here's how you do that. To rationalize, you multiply both the numerator and denominator by square root of 2. So here's why. Here's what happens. So your numerator, 7 times root 2 gives you 7 root 2. Your denominator, square root of 2 times square root of 2 basically turns to square root of 4. All you have to do now is simplify and you are done. 7 root 2 doesn't simplify, but square root of 4 is 2. So you put that there and you are done right here. Notice that we no longer have the square root in the denominator. So let's try example 5. So again, we have the square root of 2 at the bottom in the denominator, so that's not possible. So let's rationalize. So again, to rationalize, you multiply both the top and the bottom by square root of 2. And of course, I'm getting the square root of 2 from this right here, from the part that cannot be at the bottom. So let's simplify. Your numerator stays the same, 2 root 2. The denominator, square root of 2 times square root of 2 gives you square root of 4. Simplify and you will be done. So bring down the 2 root 2. Denominator, square root of 4 is 2. Notice that on this one you have one more step. 2 divided by 2 reduces to 1. So your final answer here is square root of 2. Okay, so go ahead and try these problems, rationalize them, and then pause the video and come back and check your answers. So for example 1, multiply both numerator and denominator by square root of 7. And let's simplify. So the numerator, just write it down as 14 root 7, nothing simplifies. Your denominator, square root of 7 times square root of 7 is square root of 49. So now simplify your perfect square. Square root of 49 is 7. And again, you can reduce 14 divided by 7. Your final answer is 2 root 7. Now, some of you have already see the shortcut, so here it is. For the ones who don't see it yet. Notice that we had square root of 7 times square root of 7. So we did one more step from there. We multiplied those and got square root of 49. And then we got 7. So the shortcut is just the number here inside the square root. Let's try that on the next example. So on example 2, you're rationalizing the following. So let's multiply both top and bottom by square root of 7. If you simplify at the top, you get square root of 21. And at the bottom, you get square root of 49. Now, square root of 21 cannot be simplified, so bring it down. Denominator, square root of 49 is 7. Now, let's do it using the shortcut, just in case you didn't get it in the first example. So if we have square root of 3 times square root of 7, we have to rationalize. So multiply both top and bottom by square root of 7. The numerator, square root of 21. And your denominator will be 7. So again, if this shortcut doesn't make sense to you, just do it the long way, which is this right here. So that's it. So go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to Palomo TV.